Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. You know what, there's sun's just going down. I'm actually facing, I think, basically east. I'm out in New Mexico. Before we do anything else, I want to show you something cool, so check this out. This train right here, I passed a little while ago. By the way, I'm in Milan, New Mexico. And it's exit 79 off of I-40. But I passed this train a while ago, and it's carrying like a butt-ton of armored vehicles. And I'm really hoping that these are all going over to help the Ukrainians defeat the Russians. But I wanted to show this to you. Those are all M1 Abrams tanks. So it would not shock me that these are going to the West Coast. There's some depots out in the desert near Bakersfield, and then a lot of this equipment is going to end up, those are Bradleys right there, they're going to end up in Ukraine. In fact, that's like a woodland kind of camouflage, the old school woodland, not really a desert camo on those Bradleys. But this whole train looks like it's just military's hardware. The other thing is if I was wanting to invest right now, more than I already do, I might find out the manufacturers of equipment like this and buy some of their stock. So that blue and white stripe badge that you see on those boxes, that's the 3rd Infantry Division. Shoulder patch. They're also the guys that are the old guard in Washington, D.C. Okay, and real quick, a little railroad geek stuff. So you notice the lead engine on that train was a BNSF engine, because this is BNS trackage out here, BNSF trackage. The second engine and the engine all the way on the back, they call them distributed power units, DPUs, are both CSX locomotives. The reason that I think that the CSX locomotives are on it is because where that shipment originated was in an area served by CSX. It could have been, it could have been any fort, out on the East Coast. So it could have been Fort Campbell, or I don't know if they store a lot of armor at Fort Knox anymore, but anyway, could have been anywhere out there, South Carolina, North Carolina, you name it. And keep in mind that the M1s, the Abrams tanks, those have to be Army, because the Marine Corps has stood down their tank battalions. There's no more Marine tanks. So for those of you keeping score at home. So a couple of history things, both related to the military, as it turns out. On this day, in 1918, the Germans, I believe it was 1918, the Germans were the first military to use poison gas in warfare. And on this date in 1945, and I don't know why, but I was thinking of this guy the other day. but I didn't go researching him. I just thought of him. An Army private by the name of Eddie Slovic, I believe Eddie was his first name. Anyway, Slovic was definitely his last name. He was executed by firing squad for desertion during World War II. He was the first and only soldier, U.S. military member since the Civil War to have been executed for desertion. And there's a very, I was subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I mean, I understand the penalties. There are penalties of death in a lot of the UCMJ. Of course, this predates the UCMJ, right? The UCMJ was not around during World War II, but Army regulations were. But there's a movie that starred a young Martin Sheen that was probably came out in maybe the early 70s about this, about the execution of Private Slovic, and how Eisenhower gave, it's like, here's this soldier who is disillusioned or whatever, and then here's this supreme Allied commander who gives the final okay to carry out the sentence. So it's a tragedy, because he was made an example of. So anyway, if you have time, you might want to check that movie out. It was pretty good. There was a good cast, and besides Martin Sheen, there were several other. I can't remember if Ben Gazzara played Eisenhower in that film. I can't remember, but there's a decent cast in it. I remember seeing it on TV as a kid. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a couple of things. First, I wanted to talk about a little trucking business. Somebody asked me in a comment if I used the accountants that are there at Prime. And I apologize, I can't even remember their name. But the accounting firm that's in the building in Springfield. And my answer was an unequivocal no, and here's why. I was told at some point in the past, somebody said how much they charged to set up an LLC and get somebody their EIN. And I was shocked and slightly angered, not because I paid that, but because I feel like they're preying on people who really are unsophisticated and don't realize that setting up an LLC and getting an EIN is something that, and I am not joking about this, I am not joking, a fourth grader can do it online in about 20 minutes as long as the fourth grader has a credit card. Because, like Paul, the guy that used to be on my truck, he set his up while we were going down the road, and I just kind of said, he's like, oh, what do I put here? And I'm like, put this. It's that simple. It's a one-page form that in most states, once you have a registration for the corporations and the Department of Corporations or Corporation Commission or Secretary of State, whatever it is, it's honestly, you could ask Paul, but it's 10 minutes. And then to get an EIN, again, you just go on the IRS's website. That's even free, right? But you could set up an LLC in most states, you could set up an LLC that's not even an expedited filing. Sorry, I'm just taking out my wallet, my George Costanza wallet, for $150. And the number I think I heard was something north of $1,000 for setting this up. Honestly, at that price, they should be, I don't know, have really, really nice offices. The other reason, so that was a concern, because if they're charging that just to set up an LLC and get you an EIN, which is, like I said, getting an EIN is free. If you got 10 minutes, you know, the reason I wouldn't use them is because if they're doing that for something that's, and by the way, as an attorney, a practicing attorney, I never ever charged anybody that much money, unless like we were doing, like sometimes we would set up what they're called shelf LLCs for investment vehicles, and we would do it in Delaware. And in Delaware, there are all sorts of fees. Like you can actually get an entity, you can set up a corporation in Delaware in an hour, and the fee is like, you know, the normal fee plus $2,000. If you want 3 hours service, it's $1,000. You know, if you want overnight, it's 500 or whatever. But that would be the only reason that I would charge somebody, you know, 4 figures for setting it up, is just because of the filing fees. Because again, even like with an LLC, LLCs aren't even incorporated. They don't have charters, right? They're a business association, an unincorporated business association. It's a one-page form in most states, unless there's a lot of white space on the articles of organization. So when I saw that, or I heard that, I'm like, I don't even want to know what their fees are for just doing a tax return. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I have seen them talking to people, not in their offices, but just like out in the lounge. And like one time, the area that I call the library, it's like got some books and it's got a desk. I was in there and there was this dude talking to this couple, and I think the couple was married. And I learned a lot about their personal situation, including the fact that they hadn't filed taxes for a couple of years. Why? Not because I really cared to learn anything, but just because they're having this meeting in a public space. That's unprofessional. You know, so to answer who does my taxes, or the taxes for my business and my wife and I personally, we have a local accountant who knows us, who knows, you know, the rental properties we have, all the stuff we're doing. It provides good recommendations for stuff, you know. So I don't know how sophisticated these guys are, but it doesn't really matter to me, because I judge things based on maybe other criteria that other people don't. So that's a kind of a business question. Another question that somebody asked me was, does this outfit do payroll? Oh, Abacus. That's their name. Do they do payroll? And the answer to that is, I don't know. However, what I said was this: if you're going to turn payroll over to a third party other than your bank, now a lot of banks offer payroll services that are not the cheapest, but they're typically very they're very solid, right? They don't mess stuff up. The tax payments get made on time. It's a big bank. They have a lot of, you know, they don't want to mess anything like that up, and they always, you know, the funds always go where they're supposed to. But let's say you have a number of employees. Like once you have more than a couple employees, the bank charges are probably going to be too much. And what I said is, go to a national, huge payroll service if you're going to use a payroll service. Now you could use like QuickBooks, and I certainly did that with my law firm for quite a while. And then I had a relationship through just a networking relationship with a guy who was at ADP, and we had gotten a little bit bigger, and I was like, you know, I'll, you know, work with ADP. And ADP is a huge company, don't get me wrong. They're not great at small businesses, like providing a lot of, you know, hand-holding or anything like that. But they do offer a good suite of things to help manage employees, like, you know, keeping track of vacation time, taking care of, like, if you have a W-2 employee and you want to set up maybe a small, like a simple IRA, or, you know, a kind of a 401k that maybe is not, doesn't have a ton of bells and whistles. They can help with a lot of stuff like that, workers' comp stuff. They have a whole suite of things. Again, it's a la carte, and it does cost, but they are a huge player, publicly traded company. They have a stellar reputation. The other servicer I would recommend that I've also used in years past is Paychex. Paychex is a big company based in Rochester, New York. They do kind of more specialize in small businesses. They're a little bit more geared towards that. But they're, again, a very huge company, very solid company. Here's why I don't recommend what I call mom and pop, payroll companies, or, and a lot of times they're like mom and pop bookkeeping. They're not CPAs, right? And here's the other thing I will tell you. When you're interested in professional services, pay the money for a professional, and here's why. CPAs and attorneys are licensed professionals, right? If they screw something up, their license and their livelihood can be at risk. But if you just hire a bookkeeper, right? I was really animated when I said bookkeeper. If you just hire a bookkeeper, that's somebody with a spreadsheet, right? That's somebody with QuickBooks, okay? Even if they have an accounting degree, it doesn't mean they're licensed, because certified public accountants are licensed, okay? And even if, somebody's a bookkeeper, right? If they screw your books up, or, they don't pay your taxes or whatever, there's not a ton of downside risk for them unless they were defrauding you. And by the way, a lot of small businesses are defrauded by their bookkeepers. And I could get into a whole, lecture about, audit and accounting and having separation and stuff like that, best practices. But getting back to the bookkeeper / payroll company, a lot of those outfits have ripped businesses off. You find out that your payroll company went under when it's reported in the news. And I could think of one that happened in Harford County, Maryland, and they had a pretty big book of business. They had dozens and dozens of clients. Well, guess what? What happens when you have a payroll service is that they always take the taxes out right off the bat for anything that you're doing. But they don't pay the taxes right off the bat, because taxes are typically due quarterly. And so how these companies make money is they have your money in oftentimes interest-bearing accounts, and they make the interest from holding giant piles of money and then constantly replenishing it, because they're putting money in weekly, or however often you do payroll, right? They're putting the money in. But then, like you might pay money, well, today's January 31st. Let's say payroll is today. They don't have to pay the taxes on today's payroll until sometime in April. So they've been keeping money from, taking money, putting it in escrow or in safekeeping, whatever you want to call it, trust account. And it's just been sitting there collecting interest. And candidly, right now, if you had $10,000 and you buy a 30-day CD with it, first of all, if it's from an FDIC insured bank, then it's safe, right? It's not going to go anywhere. Well, they can make money on that. Like 10,000, I would think they could make a couple $100 just on that. But what has happened in the past is these outfits start, dipping their fingers into those tax monies, and then start paying taxes that are due with current taxes coming in, kind of like a Ponzi scheme. And next thing you know, they miss a payment, and not only have they withheld the money from the businesses. So the businesses don't have the money, the individuals don't have the money, but then the taxes didn't get paid. And guess what? The state taxing authorities, the IRS, they're still going to require that the taxes be paid. It doesn't matter if a payroll company ripped you off. They don't care. So that's the reason that I suggest either using your bank, doing it on QuickBooks yourself, and QuickBooks does a lot of the calculating and can make sure, you know, they'll queue you up to everything you're supposed to do, or getting a larger national payroll service. Okay, so anyway, that's that kind of business stuff. And then the other thing I wanted to just talk about was that, you know, I'm still getting pre-plans. I'm still getting trips that are paying okay. And, you know, lately, when I go down a highway, I see more Prime trucks than anybody. And I know Prime's a huge company and you would expect that. But I've been in spots where it's like a Prime truck just passed me. I could see a Prime truck behind me. And on the other side of the highway, there's, you know, like 3 reefers and a flatbed, all Prime. And, you know, I mean, of course, when it's like if you buy a VW Bug, you start noticing how many bugs there are. But I think that what a lot of people don't understand, and I was talking with somebody about this recently, and this is really the only thought I wanted to share with you, like about Prime and stuff today, was that a lot of companies, big companies and small, that have shipping needs are still going to pay above slightly, how do I want to say this? So there's the spot market and the contract market. And there are a lot of truckers that think that the contract market drives the spot market. The truth of the matter is it's inverted, and that's because the spot market actually drives the contract rate. So what happens is when there's more loads than trucks, right? Contracts are here, but the spot market just goes crazy, right? And the spot market actually drags the contract rate up slowly. But now when the bottom starts falling out, these contracts, you know, if you're familiar with the concept of beta in the stock market, beta is a measurement of volatility, right? The contract rate is much less volatile. It operates in a range. Then what happens is the spot market starts, you know, a nosedive. And then as it inverts and goes below the contract rate, it actually drags the contract rate down, okay? But with companies like Prime and a lot of large carriers, but even smaller carriers that are reliable and that businesses like sometimes you go to like a shipper and it's a huge company, but it's in one location, and you'd be like, man, this local trucking company's got like 30 trailers in the parking lot, right? And some local smaller businesses, they haul all over the country, but they make a living on a business that's really close to where they're based. So these companies are like, look, even though we could go on the spot market and save money on shipments, we're actually going to honor contracts within reason because we want you to stay in business, right? We don't want you to lose your drivers. We don't want you to have to, you know, cut operations or go under. And that benefits the shippers in the long run, because one of the things, especially big publicly traded companies like, say, a Tyson or even a Walmart, right? Even though Walmart's really the recipient of stuff, but let's say Tyson or Nestle, you know, and I'm talking about stuff I know about, but every industry has big shippers, right? Like Kimberly-Clark is huge in paper, or, you know, Anheuser-Busch or whatever. They don't want companies to fold, because then when companies fold, there's less competition, and when things pick back up, they don't want to have these price spikes, right? So you know, a lot of people were chasing that spot market, but, you know, and this is why there's a lot of used trucks for sale right now. They didn't understand how the market works, okay? Companies are going to continue to do business with large carriers because it's in their best interest, not because they're running a charity, right? And at the same time, companies like Prime, and, you know, and we hear about this every day, at least in the refrigerated division, is, you know, don't be late. Don't make any mistakes. You know, customer service, right? And the reason is those relationships are important. They're important in good times and in bad times, because those huge companies they're not going out of business, right? Like Tyson's not going to quit making whatever Tyson makes, right? Chicken strips, right? Or hamburger, or whatever it is, right? Nestle's not going to quit making Stouffer's lasagna because, well, that would probably be one of the 7 signs. I mean, that stuff's pretty decent. So anyway, just a quick thought on the market. I'm on a trip right now. I picked up at Smithfield in Crete, Nebraska, and it is definitely not my favorite place to pick up. But this load is going out to Riverside, California, and I was today I finally got where I was like operating in a place that wasn't below freezing, and I think it's been like 6 or 7 days. Anyway, it's going out to Cali. Kind of got to do some clock management tomorrow. I might ask somebody if I can PC from Flagstaff to Riverside. We'll see what they say, and then they'll be like, "No, you can't do that. You're delivering." No, but I have family in Riverside, so you know, I'm just kind of like I'm going home and then kind of make a delivery on the side. Oh, real quick, I saw a pretty scary pileup. I didn't see it happen, but I came upon it right after it happened in the other lane of travel. So I was going 40 west. This was 40 east, about 10 miles east of Santa Rosa, New Mexico. And at first I thought it was because of ice, because you know the road looked a little, you know, wet, moist, whatever you want to say. And it was around 26 degrees. But after I stopped, so I slowed way down, and then I stopped at Love's, and I got out, and I was like kind of trying to slide on the parking lot, but it wasn't working, even though the parking lot looked damp. So I think but there was also a lot of fog. And I think that this pileup happened because people were just going too damn fast in fog. You know, we'll see what the New Mexico State Police say, but that would not shock me. A lot of pileups happen on good roads in fog. So, you know, if you get in a fog bank, just back it down. Just, you know, because there were a lot of these collisions, and after I thought about it, a lot of the collisions were rear enders. It wasn't like people were flying off the road. There was some vehicles in the median, but I think that's just because they bailed out there. There was one truck that was jackknifed, but again, he might have just hit somebody and jackknifed. But I saw one pickup truck that had plowed into the back of one of the, I think it's Reliable, that has the big orange auto carriers, and they always have like these giant tractors and stuff, and they have like this bubble thing on the back, and a pickup truck had plowed into the back of one of those on the shoulder. Like, I think the truck driver tried to get over, kind of slow things down, and this other guy decided to bail onto the shoulder, and that's a freaking giant ass orange pumpkin too, and this dude in the pickup still couldn't stop in time. So anyway, I just share that with you. All right, it's good talking to you. I'm going to try to get done early tomorrow and ride my bike in a place that's not, 10 degrees below zero. So I might be out in Arizona. Probably be in Arizona tomorrow. We'll see if it's if I can catch some sunshine, and maybe go on a little bike ride tomorrow over in Williams or maybe Kingman. So we'll see. Anyway, talk to you soon. Bye.